Coming up in today's newscast, the first waves of United States sanctions on Iran are reimposed today. Israeli cities again fight back against forced store closures on the Sabbath, and believe it or not, Eilat's shallow water coral reef is expanding. Today, the United States will resume its first wave in a series of intense financial sanctions against Iran. These sanctions are designed to cripple the Iranian economy in an effort to punish the regime and deter its development of nuclear weapons. United States Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has affirmed that the White House will back these sanctions to the most extreme letter unless Iran halts its malign activities all over the world, including its mission to wipe out the state of Israel. The first wave of sanctions commencing today target the nation's gold and precious metal sector, as well as its automotive industry. In a last-minute delivery, however, Iran was able to secure 5 new commercial airplanes on Sunday from Europe before today's ban went into effect. The sanctions will also halt imports of Iranian pistachios and carpets, but the true test will commence on November 4th when the sanctions expand to Iran's oil sector and its central bank. In preparation for the anticipated fallout, Iranian officials have begun to ease laws around foreign exchange rules. The local currency in Iran, however, has plunged in recent months ahead of these expected waves of sanctions. European leaders are still scrambling to keep Iran in the JCPOA nuclear deal, but Iran has made it very clear that Europe, China, and Russia will need to balance out the impact of Trump's sanctions in order to make that happen. This is a difficult position considering Trump has threatened to sanction nations that don't align with U.S. policy. Some say that Iran will only play ball once its economy crumbles. Others worry that as Iran becomes more and more desperate, the regime may become volatile in unpredictable and dangerous ways. Joining me now with more about the reimposing of sanctions on Iran is Professor David Menashri from the Alliance Center for Iranian Studies at the Tel Aviv University. Thank you so much for coming in, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
So my first question, let's open, what do you think Iran's first initial reactions to the sanctions will be?
Well, I tell you, the situation is for the Iranians, they find themselves in very confused situation. One thing that President Trump managed to do is to make them unsecured, not knowing what will be tomorrow. So the reaction is to show they are powerful, their response will be strong, we'll do A, B, and C, we'll shut the Hormuz Gulf from oil exporting. That's they've been always doing when they are weak. So there is a difference between what they feel and what they say. The crisis is very deep, regardless of the sanctions. And on the top of that, when you have sanctions that deals also with the currency, with commercial, it makes life very unsecure for the people of Iran, and it doesn't really matter what the government say, the people are in desperate situation.
So is it more likely then, you mentioned closing the Strait of Hormuz, and there were also allegedly threats of closing the Straits of Bab el-Mandeb. First of all, would that lead to war, and is that ultimately what Iran wants in order to show the strength that you're talking about? Or is it more likely that as the crisis in Iran increases, the people of Iran might, maybe take to the streets more and more often, and it'll kind of be an implosive situation?
Threats to close the straits, we have heard about it from the beginning of the war in the Gulf in 1980, and took them years and years, and they didn't know, because they shut down these straits. They cannot export oil. They bring about on themselves all the Arab exporting countries. I don't think that's their priority. Their problem is that this is a failed revolution. A failed revolution that people believed it will bring freedom and bread. It didn't bring better life for the people of Iran, and there is no more democracy in Iran. Now, the people are unhappy. Disillusionment, disenchantment, and the slogans being raised today in Iran are the worst that one could have imagined ever since the beginning of the revolution. Attacking the very Islamic regime and Ayatollah Khamenei, the supreme leader. Now, the expectation in the West is that greater pressure will lead to the collapse of this regime. that one day this will happen. But we don't know when it will happen, because in a country like Iran, the government also knows how to deal with this kind of situations. And as they said, nothing succeeds like suppress. And they know the art of suppression.
All right. My absolute final question, because we have to wrap it up, unfortunately. But, you know, are we going to see, or rather, I'll put it this way, what needs to happen for the best possible resolution, and what does that resolution look like?
Well, I think that the United States should not speak about change of regime, but change of a policy of regime. It doesn't make, it's not much difference between them, because if they change the policy as much as America wants, this will not be the same regime. What can be done? You need Europe to be on your side. Under Obama, there was a transatlantic alliance. Today, it doesn't exist. And then you need Russia and China. They were initially joined America in imposing the sanctions, and they are not. So you need the entire world, but America is strong enough to pressure hardly on Iran.
Okay, so again, speaking of that, now let's go back to the JCPOA nuclear deal. The United States has pressured the other countries, saying, you know, we'll sanction you as well if you continue to do business with Iran. Meanwhile, many of the P5+1 powers are saying that maybe they'll try and, you know, fill in the gaps that the United States leaves behind to keep Iran in the deal. Do you think that that's possible? Is that even in their best interest?
Well, I tell you, there is a difference between what the governments of Europe say and what the companies are doing. The companies are more sensitive to the pressure of the United States, and the atmosphere is of insecure atmosphere to do business in Iran, and this in itself harms the Iranians.
I see. All right, Professor, thank you so much for coming in. It was an honor to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now IDF Chief of Staff Gadi Eisenkot has just met with the Knesset Security Cabinet to discuss the terms of the Egyptian UN-brokered ceasefire deal. While Hamas has apparently agreed to the terms, Israeli officials are considerably more skeptical coming away from the table. For now, a short-term ceasefire with Hamas seems far more likely than any long-term deal between the two parties. On paper, the terms of the deal seem within the realm of possibility, but as always, execution is a difficult two-way street. Hamas, for example, has demanded the release of 5 high-profile prisoners in Israeli custody in exchange for the potential release of the bodies of 2 IDF soldiers and 2 Israeli citizens being held in the Strip. For Israel, however, the release of these prisoners may be too unreasonable a request given their crimes. Furthermore, the deal hinges on an overall restructuring of the Gaza Strip and the handing over of Gaza to Mahmoud Abbas's Fatah party in the West Bank. But that level of Palestinian reconciliation is a hurdle that so far has yet to be successfully cleared after 10 years of starts and stops. But there is a silver lining. Israeli leaders may agree to a short-term opening of the Kerem Shalom border checkpoint in exchange for an end to the Hamas-sponsored incendiary kite and balloon attacks. While officials have reaffirmed that any broad deal must include Hamas's release of any IDF POWs or their remains, the survivors of those fallen soldiers say otherwise. The mother of IDF soldier Oron Shaul, whose body has been in Hamas's hands since 2014, now says that 2 years ago, Prime Minister Netanyahu called her family liars in a private meeting. A similar accusation has just been made by Leah Golden, the mother of soldier Hadar Golden, whose body is also in the Gaza Strip. Golden claims that the Prime Minister's wife, Sarah Netanyahu, called her ungrateful during a phone call because Golden invited Netanyahu's political rival to a memorial service for her son.
So it's not understandable that our Prime Minister will provide humanitarian aid to Gaza and initiate arrangements and other solutions for Gaza without requesting the return of Hadar and Oron as a first step.
Representatives for the Netanyahu family have fiercely denied these allegations, but the accusations, even if untrue, reflect a growing anxiety over the fate of these IDF soldiers who died protecting their country. At the beginning of the year, the Knesset narrowly passed the contentious mini-market bill, a law that shutters most businesses on the weekly Shabbat holiday every Friday and Saturday. At the time, Interior Minister Aryeh Deri of the ultra-Orthodox Shas party said that he wouldn't actually enforce the law, but now, several months later, that has very much not turned out to be the case. ILTV's Brett Allen Smith is here with more updates on this story. What's the latest, Brett?
Well, as you said, Aaron, critics of the law, which includes, business owners, secular Jews, businessmen, etc., they were assured by Deri back in January that he had no intent of actually enforcing that bill once it became a law. But pretty quickly, it was obvious that the ministry would, in fact, be following the very letter of that law. I mean, within weeks, the government started going city to city, making lists of, businesses and employees that were operating on Fridays and Saturdays and issuing fines accordingly. That's cities like Ashdod, where they mounted huge protests to that. And then the government backed down for a while. But now Delhi's ministry has actually annulled the bylaws of several cities, 5 actually, across Israel, which had previously allowed them to bypass that mini-market law. So clearly the government is again mobilizing to follow that law to the T as written, despite whatever promises Delhi did make months ago.
All right, now these 5 cities, we're talking about Modi'in, Rishon LeZion, Cholon, Givatayim, and Herzliya.
Right.
These are all cities in the center,
right,
typically
near Tel
with
Aviv area.
Exactly, typically with mixed immigrant populations and secular Jews as well as non-Jewish foreign workers. So as I understand it, as you mentioned, those cities all passed local bylaws which allowed them to skirt the mini-markets law.
Right.
So the question is, can the federal government even legally step in to block those laws now?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question, and both sides disagree about that. So the law used to specify that the Ministry of Interior, which does cover this jurisdiction, by the way, they would have 60 days to object to any city bylaw about anything once those were passed. Now, once those bylaws did pass months ago, there was no peep in the ministry. Aryeh Deri, on the other hand, contends that he now can step in at any time according to the new law. So according to him, these municipalities didn't sufficiently explain why they needed to keep their businesses open on the Shabbat weekend. The Director General of the Interior Ministry took that even a step further, but in a way that maybe sums up, the real bottom line here. He accuses these 5 cities of attempting to encourage, quote, criminal behavior that he says harms the rule of law by keeping businesses open on Shabbat. Now, legally, this will all go to the Supreme Court, but socially speaking, on the ground, this is looking like another one of those clashes of, religious laws, some would say religious coercion, against anyone who isn't an Orthodox Jew in the country. That's the feeling.
All right. Yeah, well, criminal behavior is certainly a little harsh of a title to be assigning to what are essentially just small businesses trying to earn a living. Tel Aviv, for example, was excluded completely from the final law altogether, and I know a lot of small business owners in Tel Aviv who would have gone bankrupt if not for the ability to sell on the weekends. Sure. Clearly, this issue is heating up all over again. I'm sure we'll have much more to discuss on this soon. Sure. In the meantime, thank you, Brett.
Of course.
When it comes to virtual and augmented reality, the future is here. Every other day, there's an incredible innovation in VR gaming, education, and even therapy. So why not web browsing? Well, now we have that too, thanks to DoubleX. And here to tell us all about it is Tal Landman, the COO at DoubleX VR Limited. Thank you so much for coming in.
Hi, thank you. Good evening.
It's wonderful to have you. So, Tal, tell us about the products at DoubleX and what they do.
Okay, so basically, DoubleX is VR by anyone. That's our tagline. So anyone can create VR websites, VR content, or produce or live stream VR. And the way we do it, and I'll focus about 2 products because we have more in the pipeline. So the first one is actually a platform, an online platform that allows you to create your own VR website without a single line of code. Now, if that rings a bell, it's because in the early 2000s we had Wix, who's done exactly the same, but for regular content,
just drag and drop kind of HTML.
Yeah, not for VR content. And I'll walk you a little about the process of the journey, the customer's journey. So it starts with creating the content, how you create a VR content. You take a simple 360-degree camera. If I place it now on the table, it will have numeral lenses and it will just capture all its surrounding from all angles.
Right.
That's how you produce the VR content. And then all you need to do is you upload it to the editor. The thing is, today, every month there are over 100,000 cameras like these are sold, and you can imagine the number of contents being produced, and there's just no outlet for that. So this is why we're here. So all you need to do is log in DoubleX, upload the content, as you said, drag and drops, menu, buttons, whatever a website has.
It's kind of like this intuitive thing.
Yeah, very intuitive. Like I can say that I'm not coming from coding, and it was very easy for me. It was like half an hour and bam, I had a website. And what's important to say is that as a viewer, if you want to view the content of the website, you don't need to install an app. It's all web-based.
Wow. So, okay, so you can do this from a desktop. You don't need to even necessarily have VR goggles, you know, to interface with this
totally.
and create this website. So who is this developed for primarily? For new, you know, for events, I understand?
Yeah,
for,
no, that's our second product, which I'll elaborate in a minute. But basically, it's for anyone. It could be healthcare, education, live tourism, real estate, automotive. Think about it that if I'm Honda, I can give my users the ability to be immersed in a car that's not even on the sales floor.
Well, so I want to talk really briefly about your second topic because you know I don't want to go over. So, you know, you have another product to allow live streaming in virtual reality as well. That's the second product.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be available. You know, when will both of these really be available?
Both of them will be available in the next few months. Wow. And the second one is super exciting because it's the first time that we'll be able to live stream VR, which means you're sitting at home watching a basketball game that's in another continent, and you can be immersed into this game, look at the fans, sit on the basket if you want. And all of this is enabled because of the 5G network that is now more mainstream.
All right. Well, for everybody who's interested to get involved, become a shareholder maybe, and you know, help out the campaign, there's a PeopleBiz campaign online. It's campaign 195.
Yeah, actually, it's closed. So
it's closed.
Yeah, PeopleBiz it's a crowdsourcing service. We aim to raise $100,000 within 45 days, but after 9 days, we've raised all this sum. So we had to close the campaign.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it was a very successful campaign. Hopefully, we'll make some Israelis a bit more rich. And
that's the goal, I guess.
Yeah, that's the goal. And yeah, we were a bit surprised of the success. And then we completed Series A with Landa Ventures, and we're super proud to be a part of Landa Ventures portfolio. And yeah, the founder of the company is Gal Rotem, who is an expert in the VR and 3D technology.
All right, well, this is incredible. I'm very happy for you guys. Tal, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much.
Now, cinema has just lost one of its great artists. Moshe Mizrahi, Israel's only filmmaker to ever win an American Academy Award, has passed away at age 86. Though his Oscar-winning film, Madame Rosa, was actually France's entry to the Oscars that year, Mizrahi directed a lineup of classic films adored all over the world, and especially right here in Mizrahi's home country. Mizrahi's impressive contribution to cinema spans 14 films, which cemented him as one of the medium's most acclaimed voices. Originally born in Egypt, Mizrahi made Eilat to Israel and directed his first film, Sophie's Way, when he was 48 years old. Ironically, that film went mostly unseen until about 10 years ago, when NYC magazine The Fader rediscovered its innovative jazz soundtrack, catapulting the film back into the public eye. But by then, Mizrahi had already made Oscar history as Israel's only director to win the coveted Academy Award for Best Foreign Film. Though shot in France and submitted as France's foreign entry to the 77 Oscars, Madame Rosa tells the story of an elderly Jewish prostitute who happens to be a Holocaust survivor. The titular character comes to care for a 10-year-old Algerian child and raises him as a Muslim. The film was released around the time that U.S. President Jimmy Carter was negotiating what would become Israel's landmark peace treaty with Egypt, and the film was seen as a kind of metaphor of hope for Israeli-Palestinian reconciliation as well, all factors that may have played into its Oscar chances. But Jewish themes set the stage for almost all of Mizrahi's filmography. His last film before his death was the 1986 drama Every Time We Say Goodbye, starring Tom Hanks as an American who falls in love with a Sephardic Jewish woman in North Africa. This was the first film Tom Hanks signed on for after becoming a star in the hit film Splash, and a year before he'd become a global icon as the lead in 1988's Big. Needless to say, audiences and Israelis are both mourning the loss of Mizrahi. He will be buried today in Israel, leaving behind his wife and 2 children. One of Israel's most visited locations is about to get a luxurious upgrade. Not that being the lowest point on Earth with the saltiest sea on Earth isn't extravagant enough. Eilat TV's Emmanuel Kadosh is here with the updates on the Dead Sea expansion.
Thanks, Aaron. Well, like you said, there's not much anybody could add to make the Dead Sea more unique and more special than it already is. But we all know a little luxurious leisure complex wouldn't hurt anybody, and that's exactly the plan. A new tourism center is in the works for En Bokek, which is the hotel and resort district on the Dead Sea. The Ministry of Tourism announced the plan just last week, so this is pretty exciting.
All right, well, I absolutely love going down to the Dead Sea. It's always fun and relaxing, although maybe not not at the peak of summer.
Most
it can
definitely
get
would recommend
unbelievably
it.
hot.
Yes.
But putting that aside, tell me what we can expect for this new complex.
Right. Well, aside from just floating on the surface of the water and doing a quick mud scrub, which is, one of the most relaxing things to do down there, the new upcoming Dead Sea Valley Tourism Complex is set to include 2 luxury hotels, a visitor center, entertainment and culinary venues, of course, a spa, and who could forget, some shopping, which is a good thing because, like you said, it gets pretty hot, so it's nice to do something indoors once in a while. And in addition to that, the complex is set to be designed by the renowned Israeli-American architect Moshe Sadfi, who's known for some of Israel's most iconic structures, such as the World Holocaust Memorial Center, Yad Vashem.
Is that all then?
Just just a little luxury update.
Yeah, that's
super
just
casual.
A little bit. All right, so we can definitely expect this complex to be really unique.
Yeah.
I imagine design enthusiasts alone will come just to see that.
For sure.
And then of course, they'll probably stay for the luxury treatment, obviously. Now, on another note, I know that there are already a ton of hotels offered there.
Right.
When was the last time a new one was built?
Well, there hasn't been any, additional hotel constructions in something like 2 decades, apparently, but the existing hotels that are located in Em Bokek offer around 4,000 rooms combined. And the number, is set to nearly double in the coming years with this new construction and expansions of, already existing hotels in the area.
All right, so I'm sure the government is going to promote these next expansions and accommodations to the max,
sure, yes.
which in turn will mean a spike in tourism. But, there's clearly another reason people are coming to visit the Dead Sea so often, no?
Of course. I mean, other than the fact that the Dead Sea is the lowest place on Earth, around 1,366 feet below sea level, in case anybody was wondering, and also being one of the saltiest bodies of water in the world, the Dead Sea has a unique microclimate that is found to be beneficial for all different types of, skin, joint, and respiratory conditions. So even on the off season, you'll most likely see a lot of people and a lot of tourists coming all over the world for a visit or for a treatment. It's also super interesting to note that in 2017, the Tourism Ministry opened up 16 accessible free beaches in the Dead Sea Hotel area for people to come and enjoy free of entrance, and that is what I've been doing.
All right, well, that is interesting because I'm sure a lot of people don't know the medical benefits behind the Dead Sea muds and the minerals. And I'm sure more than positive, actually, that the visiting rates would triple
For sure.
if more people were aware of the effects. Plus, let's not forget that sinkholes and receding shoreline have made the Dead Sea an especially rare life experience. So it's good that there will be more accessibility along the beaches.
Yeah, everyone should get there soon. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm looking forward to hearing more about this complex. Thank you for the details, Manuel.
Thank you.
All right, now speaking of awesome things to see in the south, Israel's city of Eilat is home to one of the most thriving marine ecosystems on the planet, a coral reef natural reserve. As we've frequently reported, this reef is under constant threat from all kinds of environmental damage, much like reefs all over the world. But now, and possibly for the first time, we are pleased to share the news that at this time, when most others are dying, Eilat's reefs actually seem to be growing. This good news is nothing short of a triumph for Israeli environmental protection agencies and ministries. Everything from sunscreen to trash to Coca-Cola spills can cause a butterfly effect of massive damages to a delicate coral reef ecosystem. But Israel's Ministry of Environmental Protection, in partnership with the National Parks Authority, appeared to have isolated the threats and taken action. And they couldn't have acted at a better time. Extending over 1,000 meters under the coast, this is truly one of the most gorgeous sights you'll ever see. The reef is home to all kinds of exotic coral and marine life, and considering it's just a short dive off the shores of Eilat, that makes it yet another reason to go see it with your own eyes. At a time when most of the world's oceans are quickly filling with toxic plastic at an epidemic rate, this is a real testament to mankind's power to undo the damage it can cause to nature. The growth amounts to about 0.5% of animal concentration in the area, and though small, this kind of encouragement will hopefully only boost Israel's conservation efforts. The Hebrew word of the day is brought to you by IDC Summer Ulpan, open to everyone. And now for our Hebrew word of the day, in honor of the wonderful news about Eilat's coral reef blooming, today's word is lifroach, meaning to blossom. We say haperach parach bagina when the flowers flourish in the garden, and aprachim pochim when the flowers bloom. Plus, a student can lifroach or blossom in class. Just remember that if you too want to lifroach or flourish, you need sunshine, water, and a deep enough plot in the soil for your root systems to branch out. And watch out for slugs. Bees are usually fine. They have more buzz than bite. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be clear to partly cloudy and warm with a low of 77 or 25 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow should have partly cloudy skies and a slight rise in temperatures. The high will be about 87 or 31 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.69 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Aaron Porras. Thank you for watching.